Making friends as a grown-up, especially when you're trying to do it in a whole new language, well, it can feel a little bit like you're trying to solve one of those Rubik's Cubes, but with the blindfold on.
Yeah.
But I think we can take that blindfold off today, right? Because we've got a couple of really cool articles to dive into that are all about just one's
Right.
from like a super brainy sociology journal, the
Hmm.
kind that breaks down how friendships actually work. And the other one is from a language learning blog. So it's got all these practical tips for actually talking to people.
Exactly.
And we're going to try to pull out all the best stuff, the stuff that you can actually use so that you can walk away feeling way more confident about starting those conversations, making some real connections, and of course, doing it all while sounding like a natural in American English, right?
That's the goal, yeah. Because it's not just about memorizing words from a dictionary. You got to get the whole social dance, the little things that make a difference. In fact, one of the articles, it really zeroed in on those very first few seconds when you meet someone.
Oh, interesting. So like that initial hello, that can feel like a make or break moment, can it? What did they have to say about actually like getting those first words out?
It's funny, both of them really stressed keeping it simple. Starting with something like, "Hi, how you doing today?" or "Nice to meet you." But say in that clear, friendly American English way can go a long way.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and that language learning blog. They were big on this idea of using a softer, gentler tone of voice just to make yourself seem more approachable right off the bat.
It's like, setting the vibe from the get-go. You want to make the other person feel comfortable.
Right.
One of the articles even said, like, you got to get past those super basic greetings pretty fast. What did they suggest?
Oh, well, they were all about open-ended questions.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of asking something that just gets you a yes or no, they said, go for questions that make people want to talk more. Like, think of it as a friendly invitation to share a little bit of themselves.
I see.
And that sociology piece even pointed out that starting your questions with what or how tends to get people to give you richer answers,
Oh, interesting.
which of course keeps the conversation flowing.
It makes sense.
So instead of saying, "Are you enjoying the event?"
Wait.
you can say, "What brings you to this event today?"
Yeah.
You see how it just opens things up?
Oh, absolutely. It's subtler, but it feels way more inviting.
Yeah.
Speaking of inviting, that language learning blog, they had a whole section on using compliments to break the ice. But they were also really careful to say, hey, if you're speaking American English, make sure those compliments are sincere. None of that fake stuff.
Oh, yeah. Huge point. A genuine compliment, and one that's really specific, that shows you're paying attention. Like, I love the design on your mug. Is there a story behind it that can spark a real conversation?
And I guess the sociology article kind of chimed in there saying that focusing on things besides appearance, like maybe someone's skills or something smart, they said, can lead to a much deeper kind of connection.
Right. It goes beyond just surface level stuff.
Yeah, less superficial.
Exactly.
What about just commenting on something you're both experiencing right then and there, like the environment you're in? That always feels like a safe bet, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Both articles were totally on board with that. Like, if you're at a coffee shop, you could say, wow, this is amazing coffee. Have you tried their pastries? Or, if you're going full on American, you could just make a comment about the weather.
Oh, that classic American icebreaker, right?
Yep. The language learning blog even had a sample line for us. They said you could try, "The weather's certainly something today, isn't it?" And then add some kind of lighthearted comment about it, maybe even a little joke.
Perfect. So you've said hello, you've broken the ice. How do you keep that momentum going? How do you show that you actually want to get to know this person, especially in American English? Are there specific phrases you can use?
Oh, definitely. The language blog had a couple they really liked. One was, "It's so nice to finally meet someone new around here." And another one, a little more direct but still friendly, was, "I've been hoping to chat with someone." These are phrases that really let people know you're interested, and they tend to work well in those typical American social settings.
And I guess your body language is going to match those words too.
Oh, big time. Both sources stress that. Eye contact, standing or sitting in a way that's open and welcoming, that all matters.
Right. So you've made contact. The vibe is good. Now you got to turn this into a real conversation. What's the secret sauce there?
This is where that whole active listening thing becomes super important, especially in American conversations. And both articles were all over this. They said, it's not enough to just hear what someone's saying. You've got to really lean in and engage with them, especially when you're speaking American English.
Yeah.
So that means nodding your head, making little sounds like uh-huh, or that makes sense, and asking follow-up questions that show you're actually paying attention.
So like, If someone says they like hiking, instead of just saying, oh, cool, you can ask, what trails do you like around here?
Exactly.
And that shows you're really interested.
Yeah, and the language blog had a great point about sharing something back, making it a two-way street. It can't just be you asking all the questions. Like, if they talk about a trip they took, you can share a quick story about a time you traveled too. Just something to create that connection, to make it a conversation. That's key in American English.
Makes sense. It's about finding those little points where your experiences connect, right? That's how a conversation starts to feel like a friendship, especially here in America.
Totally agree. That sociology article actually said that doing things together and having those mutual interests, those are some of the biggest things that make people become friends as adults.
And the language blog had a super tactical tip. They said, listen for keywords and what the other person is saying, and then see if you can find a place where your interests overlap. Like if they mention liking movies, you could say, oh, what kind of movies are you into? And then you can share what you like, and bam, instant connection.
Exactly. It's like building little bridges between your experiences.
And those little transition phrases we use in American English can really help smooth things out, can't they?
Oh, for sure. Things like, speaking of that, or that reminds me of. Those are classic American ways to change the subject without it feeling awkward.
Right.
The language blog was all about keeping those phrases in your back pocket.
Makes sense. So let's say you've chatted a bit and you think, hey, I really like this person. I want to get to know them better. How do you go from small talk to something deeper?
Well, both articles had some interesting thoughts on this. It's about showing that you're genuinely curious about the other person, not just their hobbies, but like their values, what really matters to them, their hopes and dreams. And the way you do that is by asking those open-ended questions again, but ones that go a little bit deeper, like, what are you really excited about working on these days?
Oh, those are the questions that show you see them as more than just, someone you happen to bump into.
Exactly. You're showing that you're interested in them as a person.
Right. And the language learning blog reminded us that in American conversations, people really appreciate it when you remember little details they've shared and then you bring those up later. Like, hey, how did that presentation you were telling me about go? It shows you were really listening.
Oh, yeah. It makes people feel seen.
Right. And that's a powerful thing. What about sharing a bit about yourself, like your personal experiences? How does that fit into building deeper connections, especially in American friendships?
That sociology article said that when you reveal a little bit about yourself, especially something a little vulnerable, it can really help build trust and intimacy, that sense of shared humanity. But the language blog, they cautioned against oversharing too early, especially with someone you've just met. It's about reading the room and making sure the other person is comfortable with that level of sharing.
That makes sense. You don't want to jump into the deep end too quickly.
No, you got to build that trust gradually.
Yeah.
And speaking of trust, they both talked a lot about empathy. Being able to understand and acknowledge how someone else is feeling, that's huge in American English.
How do you actually express that empathy, especially when someone's going through a rough time? What are some things you can say?
They give some great examples. Things like, that sounds really tough, or I can totally see why you'd feel that way. Just those simple phrases can make someone feel heard and validated.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they even had some follow-up questions that show empathy, like, how did you get through that?
Oh, yeah. So you're not just saying, oh, that sucks, but really showing that you care about how they're feeling.
Yeah, exactly. You're stepping into their shoes for a minute.
Okay, so we've talked about compliments, empathy, and sharing personal stories. What about humor? How does that play into building friendships, especially in American culture?
Well, they both agreed that humor can be a fantastic way to create that sense of connection, to lighten the mood and make the conversation more enjoyable. Sharing relatable anecdotes or making those lighthearted observations about, well, pretty much anything can make a conversation more memorable too.
Yeah.
But the language blog had a good word of caution. Be careful about cultural differences with humor. What's funny in one culture might not be funny in another, and you definitely don't want to offend anyone, especially in American English.
Makes sense. And of course, the way you end a conversation can make a big difference in whether you see that person again. Did the articles talk about how to wrap things up in a way that encourages a future connection, especially in American English?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
The language blog had a couple of suggestions. One was to simply say something like, it was so great talking with you. I really enjoyed hearing about your work. And then if it feels right, you could suggest getting together again sometime, like, maybe we could grab coffee sometime.
Ah, so just putting it out there.
Yeah, and that sociology piece made a point that really stuck with me. They said that directly expressing a desire to stay in touch is a strong signal that you want to build a real friendship.
And in American culture, being direct about that is usually seen as a good thing, right?
Totally.
Mm.
So let's shift gears a little. We talked a lot about the general strategies, but what about some of the unique challenges that people learning English might face when they're trying to make friends in America? What do the articles say about that?
Yeah.
One of the biggest things the language blog talked about was this fear of making mistakes.
Oh, yeah, that can be paralyzing.
But both articles really stress that you have to embrace those mistakes, see them as part of the process. If you could shift your perspective and see every interaction as a chance to learn, it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Right. You're not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for progress.
Exactly. And the language blog had a great tip. Practice some basic conversation starters and responses beforehand. Having a few go-to phrases ready to go can really boost your confidence, especially in those first few moments.
So it's like having a mental script for those initial exchanges.
Precisely. And then there's the whole thing about cultural differences in communication styles. The sociology article talked about how different cultures have different ideas about things like directness and even how much silence is okay in a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
The language blog's advice was to pay attention to how Native American English speakers interact and then try to adapt your style a little bit. Like, Americans are known for being pretty direct in their communication.
Right. What might be considered polite in one culture could come across as, I don't know, evasive or even confusing in American English.
Exactly. And even body language can be a source of misunderstandings. The language blog pointed out that making eye contact, having an open posture, those things are really important in American culture. They show that you're engaged and friendly.
It's like your body language is saying, hey, I'm open to connecting with you.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about common interests earlier, right? Well, the language blog said, don't just wait for them to happen. Go out and find them. Join a club, take a class, volunteer somewhere, something where you'll meet people who share your passions.
And you already know you have something to talk about with those people.
Right. Instant conversation starter. And if you find yourself wanting to join an ongoing conversation, the language blog suggested waiting for a natural pause and then introducing yourself with something simple and friendly, like, hi, I'm your name. I couldn't help but overhear you talking about topic. Mind if I join in?
Oh, that's a great way to ease your way in.
Yep. And let's talk about rejection for a second. It happens to everyone, right?
I care.
The sociology article was really good about reminding us that not every conversation is going to turn into a deep friendship, and that's okay. The language blog said, don't take it personally. There are tons of other people out there to connect with.
It's like dating. You got to keep putting yourself out there.
Exactly.
And the sociology article reminded us that strong friendships take time. You can't force it. You just have to be patient and consistent in nurturing those new connections.
So true. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay, last question. If you're trying to make new friends as an English speaker here in America, what are some of the best places to do that? What kind of environments really help those connections bloom?
Both articles really stress the power of shared experiences. Places where people are doing something together, like a hobby group, a class, or a volunteer project, those are gold mines.
Because you automatically have something in common to talk about.
Exactly. The language blog specifically called out language exchange meetups. Those are great because you'll meet other people who are learning English or even native speakers who want to learn your language.
It's like a built-in support system, right? Everyone's there to learn and connect.
Exactly. And even places like coffee shops or parks, places where people go to relax, can be great for striking up conversations, especially if you use those tips we've been talking about. The key is to just be approachable and willing to start chatting. And remember, in American culture, people are usually pretty open to friendly interactions, even with strangers.
So don't be afraid to say hi.
Exactly. Just approach them with a smile and that clear American English, and you might be surprised at who you meet.
Well, I've learned so much from this conversation. It sounds like making friends in American English is definitely possible. You just need the right mindset and those practical communication skills.
Absolutely. It's all about being proactive, being genuinely curious about other people, and being willing to put yourself out there, even when it feels a little scary.
Okay, so to recap, it sounds like the key takeaways are start simple, ask open-ended questions, really listen to what people are saying and ask follow-up questions, share a little bit about yourself, and don't freak out about making mistakes. Just see them as part of the learning process.
Oh, and don't forget, be yourself. Let your personality shine through in your American English. That's what makes you unique.
Love it. And remember, building meaningful friendships, it takes time and effort. Be patient, celebrate the little victories, and keep practicing your American English every chance you get.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, we challenge you to try out just one of these tips this week. Put yourself in a situation where you might meet someone new and practice your American English. What's one conversation starter you could have ready? Think about it. We'll be back next time with more tips and insights.
See you then.
But in the meantime, keep practicing and keep connecting. You got this.
You do.